Data log 200-19372. Captain Glecht Gorham of IGEMA, Intergalactic Military Authority. Power squared. Current mission: resupply drone deployment. Begin log. Galactic date 2041-4561. Location: in transit to the Ildnar held factory worlds. Our recent deployment of Ravager drones had been successful and would deny access to the Koltikili system from the war-facing side. A detailed map of the drone placement has been uploaded to the fleet comms, and our journey to collect another batch was well underway. Our cruiser was in prime condition and her cargo bays were light, so a short journey was expected. I found myself strolling the bridge stations as we pierced the shift space veil. My crew was happy. Our vessel was running smoothly and the war seemed to be going in our favor. I was glad that our ship hadn't been near the front. Most of my sailors were green as the kelp they stuffed into their maws. Not one of them had seen the dreadful wrath of a Terpni warship, and I hoped none of them ever would. We were more than happy to let our larger allies take on the worst of the conflict, confident that they would persevere. As I strutted around, my head in the foam, I failed to notice a signature in the shift closing in on us at lightning speed. With a sudden lurch, our ship was tackled from the realm of light-speed travel and thrown unceremoniously into real space with a thunderous boom. All hands quickly dropped all non-essential tasks and made their way to stations. I myself had just gotten through climbing into my seat when the view screen showed our assailant, and my hearts dropped into my flippers. A Terpni assault ship nearly twice our size was staring at us, weapons hot. We barely had time to perform evasive actions before the searing bolts of plasma seared great scars across the outer plating, melting our inactive shield array in an instant. The truth was apparent after just 5 minutes of battle. We were outmatched. Only a third of our shots were able to connect, and of them there was never a single critical hit. Their attacks were much more precise and efficient, carving the hull open like a carpenter's chisel through soft Bearman wood. Our maneuvering was only wasting fuel because of the way they toyed with us, as if they merely wanted to play with their food before delivering the final blow. The odor of terror in the command deck was evidence that their psychological attack was more than my men could handle. Loath as I was to do it, I made the decision to open the emergency broadcast channel as I ordered the navigators to toss us into shift space. Our poor girl screamed and shook in agony, but retreat was the only feasible plan. My broadcast was no more than a basic, "Save us, we're being hunted." The alarms on the bridge shrieked in deafening tones as our pursuer launched after us at high speed. An idea struck me, and I ordered us to drop into real space before they connected. It was a gambit, but it might just put a little distance between us. On my mark, the helmsman throttled the emergency brake, slamming us back into normal space with another concussive blast. My body ached, and bile flowed freely onto the floor as the after effects of such reckless piloting hit us. To my amazement, the enemy craft exited the shift in a dramatic burst of crimson light that shimmered behind them as they struggled to control their inertia drift. With the few precious seconds I had purchased us, I sent a second hail into open space. We need assistance now. The enemy will not allow our escape. I could smell the smoke coming from the lower decks wafting through the ventilation ducts, as well as the telltale flickering of the overhead lights that came before a reactor shutdown. Lucky for us, the hunters seemed dazed for a moment longer than I had anticipated, giving me enough time to hear the reply that came from a nearby colony. Transcript of our conversation. "Hello there, IGEMA Power, we hear you. I'll keep it short and sweet. Fly your asses this way right fucking now. You got enough of a shift engine left to make it. It's gonna hurt like hell, but it'll be better than being dead. We read you. Please identify before we initiate shift. Ethan Pluton, salvage foreman for the Earth-Mars Trade Company. Be advised, our pursuer is an assault ship of Terpni make, Kartok class or greater. Understood. Hurry up and get in shift pronto." Following the suggestion of this Ethan, we locked onto the transmission point and entered the shift, right as a volley of seeking missiles tried to catch us off guard. The Tirpney were quick to react this time and close the distance between us in the blink of an eye. For the third and final time, we were tossed about the deck from the forceful impact. The diagnostics panel told me that everything was now in critical condition, worst of all being the shift engine and the propulsion systems both being completely destroyed. The lights flickered once more as the reactor also bid us farewell, leaving us adrift on emergency power. As we drifted listlessly in the void, the view screen showed the space around us. We appeared to be in a thick, scrap-filled asteroid belt from the early years of the war. A veritable ship graveyard surrounded us on all sides, as well as buoys and lights from the supposed salvage team who were oddly missing. I wondered briefly if Ethan had lied to us as the enemy slid closer to us. Our cunning evasion had seemingly impressed the Tirpney hunters, as a direct hail came from the ship. The voice on the other side of the speaker came through with a deep, rumbling voice. "Very well done, my little fish. You've managed to entertain us quite well. Your pathetic squirming ends now." Then, a different hail came across the line to both of our ships. "Sorry to disappoint you, but it's you who's reached the end of their rope." From every asteroid and floating wreck came a flicker of light as 1,000 salvage ships lit up their thrusters. The sparkling stars that glittered all around were hidden from view as the spotlights of every scrapper clicked on and focused on the outsider. The few vessels close enough to see from the view screen were tiny, barely bigger than a small fighter, but were covered in hefty collision cages and a bevy of tools designed to disassemble starships. One such vessel drifted past us with a pair of diabolical saws whirring angrily on the forward-facing limbs. "New job, boys. First one to crack open their reactor room gets double pay. Let 'em have it." The Tirpney began to spool up their hefty plasma cannons, but to no avail. The swarm of locusts that was the scrapper fleet descended upon them too quickly for their vast weaponry to be of use. Point defense guns spun wildly as they sought to eliminate the encroaching wave of wreckers. Some of the small ships were destroyed, but not enough to save the Leviathan from the worst of it. Tirpney ships lack a proper shield system, relying completely upon their heavy armor to shrug off blows. Perhaps if they had one, they could have survived. The scrappers first targeted weak points of the ship, namely the thrusters and airlocks. The assault craft had made it halfway into a return trajectory before their ability to move was on par with our own. After crippling the beast, they swarm began to attack two separate sections at the same time, the hull plates and the internal systems. Through the hail of sparks and loose flying chunks, I could see the shift engine pulled from its housing and brought out of the cargo doors. At the same time, the entire aft section of armor was peeled away in neat plates and collected by a larger ship that had evaded notice. The lights of this ship were out, but through the dark I could barely make out a distinct crustacean shape of one large flat body with two elongated graspers. Now incapable of resistance, the crew of the enemy ship could only scream into the communicator begging for mercy, but even that was silenced as a scrapper snipped the transmitter tower off. From then on, it was a mesmerizing display of organized chaos. It was as though the process of constructing the ship was being played backwards on a recording, with each component or part being quickly removed from the body in a neat and orderly fashion. A sudden burst of atmosphere told me that the life support had been located and thoroughly disassembled. Eventually, all that was left was the command segment attached to the skeletal remains of the frame. A short-range emergency broadcast came from the desiccated corpse of the war machine, meaning that the last remaining room of the ship was still housing some life. This room was soon attacked by what looked like a squid made of ducts and hoses that pried their way into the pressurized room without venting it. A few lights even flickered to life from the defeated hunter. Eventually, I fell back onto my chair, unaware that I was standing and had been holding my gills shut instinctively. Won the screen, a larger vessel came close to our command room with a new broadcast. "How's it going there? I hope y'all are still kicking after all that." I quickly keyed the emergency power into the low-power transmitter. "Yes, my crew is still alive. Thank you. Oh, so much, Mr. Foreman. You have saved many lives this day. Don't think nothing of it. Sides, job ain't done yet, not while we got a friend in need lying in our yard. Pop the cargo door open so me and the boys can get you patched up." I complied, though I was unsure of where they would get an entirely new shift drive. Then I saw the crab-like ship with the enemy ship's critical components in its claws drift close to the cargo bay, depositing the replacement parts inside before placing large panels of the claimed armor of the enemy on our hull so a few scrappers could weld it in place. Before I knew it, our ship had been restored to full capabilities, perhaps even more. The Tirpney armor and shift engine were much better than ours, and the repairs made to our reactor and thrusters using salvaged parts had put us back into stable flight capabilities. I was in awe of the dedication and ingenuity of these scrappers. I invited their foreman to the bridge so I could thank him. He arrived in what I can only describe as a cowboy environment suit. He wore a thick leather jacket over his hazard suit and an EVA thruster pack on his back. The reinforced helmet was opaque and featured a myriad of cameras and lights around the faceplate. A bright red tag on his chest read, "Foreman Pluton, 15 years of service." He strode up to me and extended a hand towards me. It was then that it clicked for me. This man was a human. They had been a late addition to the war, but had been keeping the wartime economy in check with a steady supply of consumer goods and services. Tales of their heroics and bravado were the stuff of legends, which was why their ships operated almost exclusively in the heaviest of conflict areas. I reached my own hand out for his, my 3 digits awkward nestled between his 5. "Thank you so much for all that you have done. You have not only saved us, but even given us a means of traveling home. You truly are our saviors." The human chuckled from behind his visor as he gave me a dismissive wave. "Don't go and praise us too much. We're on the same side, so of course we'd lend you a hand when you're in a bind. Just make sure you get back safe, eh?" Our hands released one another, and the human strode towards the viewport to gaze upon the handiwork of his men. He placed his hands at his hips, which I now noticed had concealed weapons. I ignored protocol this once, as it would be rude to detain our hero. My own flippers carried me to his side. "What will you do with those you have captured and their remaining vessel?" Ethan shook his head ruefully. "Got no choice but to turn him over to the IGMA. Much as I hate to let bona fide military men rot in a cell, we're at war and they fired on us as well as ran you and your crew ragged. As for their clunker, we'll sell it off piece by piece, same as any wreck. Tirp tech ain't too different from our own, but their stuff was high-end on this particular boat, probably so it could slip past the front and do some sneaky covert shit. Ah, well, money is money. Speaking of..." He withdrew a small tablet from his pocket and gestured for me to take it. "Here's your cut. Repair costs have already been taken out, but the finder's fee covers that. Far as any legality can reckon, you sold us that ship fair and square." For a moment I was dumbfounded, as he was offering me enough credits to have the power squared refitted twice over. I could barely stammer a reply. "I couldn't possibly take so much. You deserve..." His hand grabbed mine and forced the tablet into place while placing a reassuring grasp on my shoulder. His tone of voice was reassuring yet stern. "We deserve nothing but what our job brings us. We're scrappers, not some men of honor or duty-bound soldiers. We believe in fair trade between equal parties. We do what it takes to earn our pay, and we always settle our debts. Just consider our part in your battle a mutually beneficial transaction. We saved your scales in exchange for the salvage rights. Just leave it at that and be on your way." With that, the human let go of me and made his way back to the door he had entered from. My men, whose faces now had a look of battle fatigue, saluted the foreman as he passed. Once he had departed from the bridge, I watched out of the viewport as his craft drifted towards the husk of the enemy ship, the open lines flooded with voices claiming to be the one to earn the prize he had offered. I couldn't help but smile. The IGM Power Squared was once again sent into shift space on a bearing for Ildnar-controlled territory. The crew morale was high, but our exhaustion kept anyone from cheering as we made visual contact with the friendly shipyards. Even as my crew disembarked to relay what had transpired to the ground crew, I remained in my seat writing a detailed report of the combat our ship had endured. As I did so, my mind idly began floating to the visual of the enemy being torn apart, like the earth-born ants dissecting their prey. Such brutal efficiency and speed that not even a ship built for battle could endure. A thought crossed my mind, and I shall add it to both my report and this log now. Respect the scrappers, especially the human ones.